In the meantime, I'd like to thank all of the participants who've shown their enthusiasm for the event. I see we have participants joining from Kenya, from Amsterdam, from Maldives, uh, somehow a lot of different countries come together. So this is, alhamdulillah, one of the positives again of being able to facilitate an online platform where the expenses of flights and hotels are now not an issue, and we can have a wider audience in this platform, and also hopefully address some ideas that will help us to create some economic initiatives that will help to recover after the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, as we know, the whole world has been economically impacted as well as medically impacted by this pandemic. But we are hoping that through the use of Islamic fintech, we can make some strides in, inshallah, finding Islamic ways to recover economically as well as to reboost and hopefully support those important sectors such as SME sector and so on. We'll give just a moment more. If our video person doesn't have the video ready, then we'll just go to the next session. Just okay. So I've been told that the video has been completed. Maybe it was just for the participants. Okay, very well. Let us move to the next session, inshallah. So now we have a panel under the title of Is Fintech the Solution for True Sharia-based Finance? So this will be a debate format, and the participants of this debate are as follows. We have Miss Joann, Sister Joann, my friend, Sister Joann Enriquez, the CEO of IAP in Malaysia, Investment Account Platform. Welcome to the platform. And we also have Mr. Salman Kabani, and also we have Associate Professor Dr. Mohammed Shah. I just want to make sure everyone is live here and your microphones are working. Can everyone?
Yes.
Is everyone able? Dr. Iskandar, are you with us?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Wa alaikum salam. Yes, we can hear you. Okay, so Sister Joann will be our moderator, so I will allow you to do your intro as well as the intros of our respected debate members, and I will hand it over to you to give their the intros and bios, inshallah, and then start the debate. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Ahmad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone around the globe. Islamic finance assets are projected to grow to about 3.2 trillion globally by the end of 2020. This, however, brothers and sisters, is a mere 1% of the total assets of financial institutions worldwide, which amounts to about 379 trillion US dollars, so just 1%. However, it is to be noted that the size of the adherents to Islam is totaling about 2 billion and is growing fast. It is also expected to be the majority in a few decades. Islamic finance, therefore, that adheres to the compulsory rules to veer away from what is forbidden or haram, becomes not only a pressing matter, but an opportunity and a necessary market to be part of. The 3.2 trillion figure is comprised of 70% Islamic banking, following by sukuk or Islamic bonds of about another 10%. Please note that zakat and waqf assets are not accounted for in the equation. Hence, it is my humble opinion that Islamic finance figures are significantly deflated. Zakat and waqf are part and parcel of the Islamic finance ecosystem and is a crucial part of the whole Islamic finance ecosystem. This, however, is another debate, which I will be very glad to be part of. But for now, I am a moderator for the proposition, be it resolved that Fintech is the solution for true Sharia-based finance. We have a modified Oregon Oxford format debate, which will have opening remarks for about 6 minutes, followed by a rebuttal of 4 minutes, and we will open for Q&A for 4 minutes and a closing remark for 2 minutes for each of the affirmative and negative side. The affirmative goes first, followed by the negative in all of the various parts mentioned. I will raise my hands as such to show 1 minute mark and raise my hands as such to show time is over. We have two outstanding speakers representing amazing institutions from two of my favorite countries, Oman and Malaysia. Oman's Islamic finance industry recorded a growth of 14% last year. The country has 2 standalone Islamic banks and 6 Islamic windows at conversional banks offering Islamic services. In January 2003, Bank Mizwa became Oman's first dedicated Islamic bank with fully Sharia compliant products and services. The bank now provides a full range of banking solutions and to individuals, enterprises, medium, small, to corporations and government institutions alike. Currently, with 13 branches, the bank is expected to expand extensively in the next 5 years. For the affirmative side, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce Salman Kabani, Head of Market Risk at Bank Mizwa. The Islamic Finance Development Indicator, FIDI, provides rankings and profiles for different Islamic finance markets around the world. Malaysia always in the top, now with 115 points, with the next following at 71 points. Part of the thriving space in Malaysia is INSIF, the International Center for Islamic Finance, which was set up by Bank Negara Malaysia in 2005 and has been mandated to develop and nurture talents and experts in the Islamic finance service industry. As a university, INSIF offers postgraduate studies in Islamic finance. Today, there are 1,747 INSIF alumni from over 72 countries around the world. For the negative side, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Iskandar Shah, Associate Dean of the School of Graduate and Professional Studies at INSIF. Let our debates begin. Mr. Kabani.
Thank you, Sister Joann. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See, this is a very interesting topic, and I think the current 2020, the COVID crisis, has actually gave more weight to the subject. So, fintech is a combination of two terms: finance and technology. So, Islamic finance actually provides financial services to the customers in accordance to the rules and regulations prescribed by Sharia. But as Islamic finance is growing, you rightly mentioned, and the market share is targeting to increase by 2020, which is very less compared to the total finance industry globally. So Islamic finance is growing by leaps and bounds since its inception in the last 2 decades. Same is the case for the fintech. The main objective of Islamic finance is to enhance economic growth in the society with the use of Sharia-compliant financial solutions. So where the role of a fintech, it comes as an enabler. It provides a cost-effective solution to the service provider. And when I said service provider, it includes all the industries, not only to the financial sector, but other industries as well. But particularly for this subject, banking and Islamic banking. Islamic banking operating cost is relatively higher to the conventional banks, where I see that the huge potential is available, and the Islamic financial institutions can benefit using fintech solution or technology as a major component in providing the services, which can improve their cost in carrying the business processes. In just give you example, in the COVID time, the situation that we are going through, technology has a major support in continuing the business. Like I give a particular case example of Bank Nizwa in Oman. Since the crisis started, outbreak happened in country starting in the late February or early March. We continued our business. There was no disruption in the business services because technology continued to play its role. Uh, it was a services that we never experienced. What we call work from home in this part of the world. Other countries they have that culture, but here immediately got adopted, and we provided services. Until today, many organizations staff are working from home. Entire process end to end from the financial starting, initiating from the generating the contract to the end to the disbursement. Everything is electronic now. But this thing still lacks because there are many partners comes into play to have that culture, to have that ecosystem. And when we say the ecosystem, there's the government agencies, the technology provider, telcos, telecommunications. Then we have the retailers that provide services. So that demand and supply gap is there, and the demand for Islamic finance started increasing, but still that supply component lacks. When I say supply side is the retailer, so still e-commerce businesses are not to that level that we using the fintech. So just to start this discussion, I say that fintech and Islamic not only limited to Islamic, it is entire ecosystem. When that come into operations, that makes more sense for to achieve a Sharia compliance, and that definitely I support that fintech has an important role to play, and especially in this crisis and going forward, I see a major transformation in the industries towards the technology.
Okay, have you concluded your opening remarks, Mr. Kabani?
Yeah.
All right, so now we have our negative side to propose the negative, the proposition of the null proposition of the what has been presented.
Let me start my negative sides with positive comments. All right, so thank you so much, Joann, and thank you so much for the organizers and also my fellow debater, Mr. Salman from Oman. So the topic today is that whether fintech is going to provide the true Sharia solutions or true Sharia products. I think it's a very tricky topic. Because saying yes to this topic will eventually says that the current solution that we have through banking and capital market might not be adequate for providing true Sharia solutions. So I've been asked to provide the opposing remarks for this topic. So rather than saying yes or no, I would probably rather argue what it takes, for example, for fintech to be true Sharia provider or solutions. So in other words, I want to highlight the issues and the challenges that might become an imperative or impediment to the solutions of Sharia through fintechs. So first of all, we have to ask ourselves is that what it takes for us to create a system that create a true Sharia solutions. Why is it so difficult for banking or even capital market that we have right now to provide a true Sharia solutions? Okay, so I have basically outlined one or two major issues. Number one is an over-regulated market in banking, which means that innovation might be quite a challenge. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is that is the regulations in fintech, is it more convenience or not? So the way I see right now is that the regulation that taking place within the fintech spheres seems to be isolated, localized, not basically happening at a much grandiose scale. The reason why I have to basically argue from that perspective is that because if you probably look at the background or the facts that we are dealing with, for example, in globally, there are about 69% of adults doesn't even have a banking account. All right. Sorry, does have a banking account. But unfortunately, in high income economies, there are almost 94% have an account as compared to the developing economies that about 63%. So in other words, majority of the Muslim countries are in developing countries as well. So in terms of income group, there are about 1.7 billion adults remain unbanked. And majority of the countries are basically in Bangladesh, China, India, Indonesia, Mexico, Nigeria, and Pakistan. So in other words, what I'm trying to say here is that the first concern that I have is regulations, whether we have enough regulations in the market to ensure that the fintech market, which seems to be more localized, more regionalized, can actually cater to these insurmountable challenges or market inclusion that probably are looking at. Number two, economy of scale. All right. So do we have enough economy of scale to take on the established system more like a banking and also capital market? It's true. Fintech is basically a combination of the two. Is more innovative. But my concern is that it's much more happening at the local and a smaller scale. So with that local and smaller scale, can we take on a much more established system as well? And the third point, which I really want to make here, is that one of the reasons why it's so difficult for banking or even capital market to a certain extent to really provide a true Sharia product or solution is because of the information asymmetry that happening within the system. So in other words, in the simple layman term, is the trust issue. All right. So even a market like banking and also capital market, which is highly regulated, yet the trust issue still remain there within the user and also the provider. So now the question is that when we want to come out with a true Sharia solution, which mainly based on trust mechanism, because that's one of the reasons that preventing resharing products from becoming a mainstream products. So that still exists within, for example, the Islamic economics. The issue of governance, rule of law, corruption, so on and so forth. So with all these things as a background, can we have a true Sharia product through fintech or not? So I have already outlined three major concerns which I have. First, let me just recap my argument. First, because it's localized, because it's regionalized, so how do we have, for example, a standard and regulation to control or basically to govern this industry? That's number one. And number two, when we are talking about economy of scale, all right, if you just having this one provider is providing a smaller scale market, so on and so forth. So how do we basically wants to position, let's say, resharing products through fintech, for example, or through Sharia product through fintech in terms of competing in much greater scale with banking and also capital market? But I'm not saying that capital market does not provide a true Sharia product. But the topic today is that whether we can offer a better true Sharia product through fintech or not. So that is my second concern. The third concern is basically the trust issue. Especially in the Muslim world, when the rule of law is quite weak, when the governance is actually very weak. In fact, the banking, which is even governed and regulated, are not able to provide a true Sharia product. So how we expect fintech to do that? So based on these three arguments, I'm not saying no to the answers. What I'm exactly saying is that these are the major challenges, and these challenges will prevent fintech from offering a true Sharia product. So in order for us to allow fintech to become a mechanism or to make a mainstream instrument for us to access to a true Islamic finance product, then we have to overcome these three challenges. So Joann, back to you. That's my opening remarks.
Thank you. Just at the nick of time. So our two debaters on the affirmative side presented to you the opportunities that is given to the current status quo to use technology to be able to provide more Islamic or Sharia-based products. The negative posed three topics, three null propositions that questions this opportunity. Number one is the regulations ready for such a proposal? Number two, the economies of scale, and number three, the information asymmetry, basically around trust. As you all know, Islamic finance promotes risk sharing, and with these 3 points, has been raised that it will be quite challenging to be able to then ensure that the trustworthiness of the providers for these products is there, given that the regulation is already being questioned as well. So now we open to the rebuttal bit, where the both speakers can then raise topics that have been raised and question the other side. So each party has around 4 minutes. We will start with affirmative.
Thank you, Sister Joann. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Your point that's mentioned is I agree that there is a need to work on the regulations, and the regulatory side are something that restricting the growth. But see, I give the example where there's a problem. Depending on the size of the problem, the solution is proposed. So certain countries where the problem is much more than what the fintech could bring to the to the operating environment of the ecosystem, the regulators are considering fintech as a solution. For example, developing countries, Pakistan, other countries, in African countries, where the main issue is the unbanked market. So, a fintech is playing a major role in bringing the proper channel, bringing the unbanked population into the network, which without the fintech would not be possible. You cannot imagine that this kind of population you can cater the need and demand. So fintech is actually providing a solution. So what is the counter issue is a risk, that is a cyber, the information security, and the potential frauds could happen. But the solution brings a more value than the risk factors. So there, in those countries, the regulations are considering fintech as a solution. Other countries, where developing countries or where the unbanked population is in the lesser quantum, fintech has a different role to play, which is in the facilitator in the remittance. For example, in this part of the world, in Oman and GCC countries, where remittance and the instant financing, that is more important compared to a unbanked population. So here the regulation are strict on the KYC versus instant financing and the remittances. So you can do remittance on your mobile app or use another services that can provide that solution. So second thing, now we come on the scale. Scale is, again, it is a link that the solution should be cheaper. Once you make a solution cheaper and bring more merchant and more players into the network, and you open that services, you achieve the scale. The growth is linked to the population and the consumption. If you restrict the services, for example, the experience that they provide, it is only to the digital onboarding, but rest of the services are not through the technology, then it defeats the purpose. To give the benefit of Islamic finance across the population, then we have to open that services for all. Like if somebody is in the need and he wants to raise a capital or equity, so that thing. The third point. Okay.
Okay, sorry. Last sentence, please. Okay, so we take it on to the rebuttal of the negative side. Dr. Shah, Iskandar Shah, please.
Okay, so again, thank you so much, Joann, and also thank you, Mr. Salman, as well. I know my rebuttal, I think, is very simple. I'm always have this argument is that I mean, if this can be done, why we have not done it before? Why we probably require a new concepts that has to be done by a third party or a private entity, to do this in the first place. For example, Mr. Salman said, about about inclusions, about dealing with unbankable. All right. So if Islamic finance is or Islamic banking is true to its principles, don't you think that it should be the target market for us in the first place? So why we have to have a third party to do this when the bank have a moral obligations to do it as well? I'm not saying that the banks have to do this, but the question, for the sake of arguments, it seems that the Islamic banking concepts seems to be mimicking, or I would probably say the concept is still more biased to a profit, which I completely understand, and we need basically a solutions in terms of addressing this bankable and in financial inclusion, so on and so forth. So my argument is that, or my rebuttal is that, whatever that we have argued, the need of fintech or a need of a third form of solutions can be done using existing solutions as well. but it's just that the system doesn't want to do it, or the fact that we are not taking it as seriously as what we want to be. So my final remark is that we don't really need, or it's not necessary for us to just offer through finance or Islamic finance solution through fintech. My argument is that the same can also be offered using the existing framework as well. And if the existing framework is doing it, supported by fintech, then whatever argument which I have highlighted earlier, for example, economy of scale, regulation, for example, and trust, so on and so forth, can be addressed much easier. And the growth of fintech, for example, it is embedded within the banking system or even the capital market system and become a mainstream, or even is just, you know, a part of it, of the current ecosystem. I think whatever objective that we want to achieve through fintech will be much faster, will be much easier, and will be much convenient for all of us. That is basically my argument. And the last statement is that it's not fair for us to expect a very, young, emerging so-called framework to address such a long, persistent problem within the industry. Okay, so that is basically my concluding remark. Back to you, Joy.
Okay, thank you so much. We are now going to open for question and answer for a few minutes before we close. We will open the question and answer to the crowd. Let's pull up some possible questions here. Okay. Well, I have a question on the affirmative side. In the Islamic finance framework of the current setup, Mr. Kabani, if there were one thing that you would perhaps address that could perhaps unlock some avenues that are now have very high friction points, given that opportunity to have, if you had that one thing, so that then Islamic finance can thrive in the technology platform, what would that be? A project, a change in regulation, perhaps, something with IOFI, I don't know. I mean, what would that be, given that chance?
See,
The one
here
that you might think that might have an impact.
I think it is important that a synergy between the two regulatory bodies. One is telecom regulatory and the government. That is the thing that because banks are playing their role, I feel central bank and bank financial institution, that core business, they are focusing into that. Fintech is something ancillary, for which I think the service provider collaboration with the financial institutions is a good model. I think the ideal model that need to continue. The change is required at the government level, where the regulatory authority on the telecom regulatory authority and the retailer. So if that change can allow integration, that can bring the essence of the Islamic finance much easier, because the penetration rate in the of mobile telecommunication is much faster and the larger scale compared to banking channels. So I think that is a gap that I see can bring some value.
Okay, thank you. And on the negative side, would you comment on that and perhaps twist it on the point of what you drove with regard to regulation? Having that open field basically in the technology space where your telecom companies will be playing a very vital role. What do you project as problems that may arise specific to regulations? I would always say to my team, it might be rib on steroids, but of course that's sort of a joke with a little bit of a fun. Can you comment on this, Dr. Iskandar, please?
Okay, sure. Thanks, Joanne. You see, I'm always a firm believer of, not controlling human behavior, but trying to basically, try to understand the pattern of a human thinking and also human behavior. So when you do a fintech in a much smaller scale and you liberalize the market and you make it unregulated or semi-regulated, for example, and the market size and the people that you are dealing with are very small. For example, even you look at the global fintech report, how much equity that being raised, we're just talking about, for example, 10 million, 20 million US dollar. The best that we can go is basically maybe 50 million US dollar. But you try to put it into a perspective. All right. Apple alone today, the market cap is about 2 trillion US dollar. All right, 2 trillion US dollar. All right. And what I'm trying to say here is that when fintech is actually quite small, it's quite easy for us to be making it more loose and more innovative. But as it get bigger and bigger, as it's become more a part of the mainstream, then the challenge will come in terms of how you basically want to control this market or want to upscale this market. So this is exactly my concern. So it's not just about coming out with a true Sharia product, but how more importantly, how to scale it up and how to basically ensure that this particular industry or this particular domain are able to compete with the mainstream that we have. Because now we are talking about small numbers, that is absolutely fine. But when you start talking about big numbers, a complex behavior and human beings, so on and so forth, then things will become a lot more exciting. So I'm always looking at a much grandiose scale, but not discounting the opportunity and also the fact that it is relevant, but how do you making it even more relevant and an alternative to the system that we have at this point of time? That's my answer to you, Joann.
Okay, so I have several questions here, and I will summarize some because it's all in different portions. And this will be the last question before we give each about a minute to close. For the affirmative side, Mr. Kabani, is there really is technology really can be classified as Islamic or non-Islamic, or is it just simply a vehicle that can be utilized for whatever products that you are able to put in? I mean, is there? I mean, Apple was used as an example. It's not necessary that we cannot use Apple Pay or whatnot, but is technology? Is it really fair for technology to be classified as Sharia compliant or not? I mean, it can be another debate again, but you might want to put your last answer to this controversial question, please.
Yes, actually, technology can be classified as Islamic and non-Islamic because it is the design of the technology that serve the purpose or not. So Islamic is just very much concern is on the product and the process. When the technology is driving your process, it has to be driven by the Sharia rules. If that is qualifying that rules, uh, it is considered as a Islamic solution. And from many angles, the Islamic solution that we follow, we do this classification that it is a Sharia compliant or it is a non-Sharia compliant, because there is a computation, especially when we talk about the profit computation, when we charge as customer, the fairness, the transparency that we put more weight, whereas in other solution may not be providing that transparency to the end user, the computation of the profit, the fairness of the income, all the things that factors into a good in the systems. So there is a classification, but it's the end use of the technology that is more important. It depends what system you're looking, what technology you're looking for. So the end use defines that you should go for the specific classified Islamic solution, or you can go for any generic solution. It depends. For example, if you want a scanning solution, that scanning solution has nothing to do with Islamic or non-Islamic. But if you're looking for a revenue generating model, then of course Islamic solution is important.
Okay. The negative side can comment on that, please. Can technology be really Sharia compliant or not?
No, I think I have to. I'm not sure whether I disagree with the questions or not, but the way I look at it is that technology is simply enabler. It allows certain mechanism to take place. It allows us to solve certain problems. For example, by having blockchain and so on and so forth, then probably build more trust within the system as well. So I don't think that it's a fair thing to ask whether the technology itself is Islamic or not. But what I would probably say is that whether the technology that we have enable us to push what Islamic finance is all about. And I'm always argue that people seems to be looking at fintech as a third sector. It seems that okay, the burden of pushing something different has to be done by all these startup and so on and so forth. To certain extent, yes, but and can put pressure to banking and capital market as well. But I always believe that, and again, I'm sticking to my point. I'm always believe that the true Sharia solution not necessarily has to come from all these just startups and so on and so forth. It should basically come from the mainstream as well. So which means that the technology can be applied across the ecosystem, not just on selected sector. That's basically my arguments.
Okay, thank you. We have a lot of questions which the organizer will probably field to both of you. Mr. Kabani, your last 1 minute to conclude, please. Your parting words, Mr. Salman Kabani.
Um, yeah. I think fintech is something, and the Islamic Sharia compliant solution is something which we have to go with the basics. We have to work on the product side. So alone fintech cannot complete the loop. We have to work on the product side, where other players, where the retailers, the government, financial institution, telecommunication, the ecosystem, regulators, they all are the major stakeholders. Uh, I think fintech alone cannot do the job because, as Dr. Mohammed mentioned, is a trust factor. It has to be through collaboration. And banks, Islamic financial institutions, they have to focus on their core activity and let the technology be the baby of other company that service provider that can excel on it. But we have to work on the product side. That still, I think there's a lot needs to be done, especially on the capital market, liquidity management, the retail financing things. So this has to, yeah. That's it from my side.
Thank you. Last 1 minute. Thank you so much. Dr. Iskandar, your closing remark, please.
Thank you so much. As I argued that we are seeing an amazing opportunity here, but again we might argue on the same context, missed opportunity, because we are not able to use opportunity in the right way. So the opportunities are now presented to us. So if you want to bring the opportunity to a different level, then you have to basically identify the so-called the glass ceiling, the barrier, and try to remove those barriers. And that eventually will allow whether the fintech can offer a true finance solutions or Sharia solution for all of us or not. If not, we just might end up again going back to existing ecosystem and converging towards in what we see right now, and whatever solution that we want to propose might not happen in the first place. So again, my argument is very simple. I'm not against that particular statement. I'm just saying that there are big issues, challenges that still clouding the opportunity, or the hindsight, or the positive side of it, and we have to remove that. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I will close the debate. Thank you, organizers, for having us. Basically, the digital finance landscape is opening a moment of truth for the proponents of genuine Islamic finance, which promotes equity and fairness in financial dealings, where what is forbidden is not utilized and what is allowed is employed to elevate the conditions of oneself, family, and society, all for the pleasure of the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We either seize this moment that allows us to create innovative solutions to address modern day problems with the use of modern technology, or do we succumb to what now plagues modern day financial dealings in the form of riba, garar, and maisir? We hope that this week many are inspired to seize that moment of truth and walk the talk sooner. Have a blessed IFIW 2020, and I thank both Salman Kabani and Mohammed Iskandar for being with us. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you.
Thanks, Joy. Thanks, Muhammad. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.